I do this every day. I do this daily, every day. I do this.
Hello guys, we're here at Do It Yourself Drones episode 4 of the Vodcast, and I've got the lovely pleasure to interview the team from the wcUAV challenge. Hi guys, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Hi. Wonderful. So we've got a nice big hangout today. A lot of people wants to talk to you and see what's going on. Yes, can you tell me, where did this all begin? When was the first day when you decided, now I'm going to make a challenge to do rhino conservation?
Well, hi, we'll do a quick introduction first. I'm Princess Aaliyah, the founder of the challenge.
Scott, LB Williams.
Justin Lido, co-founder of Nova Labs.
Gasper van Sale, Global Unmanned Systems.
Well, actually it was, I want to say July 21st was the date, and we had Steve Gallister visiting from Thailand to U.S. after the president's executive order for counter-poaching was published. So Steve was in the U.S. to talk about what we can do to help him with technology. And I had been looking at UAVs for snow leopard protection. So once he got to the U.S., we started talking, and then from that conversation, the idea of, hey, I think a challenge would do great for rhino poaching, just because it'll, number one, help us create awareness for what's going on. Number two, we'll be able to come up with an interim solution. And number three, we'll be able to come up with a long-term strategical solution for what we can do for counter-poaching. And LB definitely can talk a little bit more about the situation on the ground here, because he's been here for a while. So I'll let him take over and tell you what was going on in South Africa and why we decided to choose South Africa as our first location for the Wildlife Conservation UAV Challenge.
Yeah, basically, as the princess said, it was pretty clear we need some help over here, and the big issue we wanted to kind of overcome is that technology wouldn't work, technology was too expensive, and really the biggest misnomer that technology replaces the guys on the ground. So a lot of misnomers when it comes to technology, and that's what the UAV challenge really allows us to do, is say it does work, it's a really good tool for our guys on the ground, helping them improve what's going on, and we can do it at relatively low cost. So.
Yeah, and then we actually started looking into options for low cost, and one of the things that we've been following is the maker movement, and that's how I was actually introduced to Justin over at Nova Labs in Reston. But actually before Scott and Justin came along, Casper and I were working on finding out ways of trying to kind of figure out how to do this, and Casper's the one that actually introduced me to Scott LB, also known as LB. So do you want to talk a little bit about what you do, and then we'll get into Justin and Makerspace?
Sure. Global Unmanned Systems is based in Centurion in South Africa. We specialize in unmanned technologies, including UAVs. So that's how it all started, was as an idea to get something out there against rhino poaching, and it evolved from that. I got a hold of my mentor in the States, Peter Bowers. He's on the call. Hi, Peter. And yeah, he introduced me using the Sable Network, Sable Accelerator. He introduced me to Princess Leah, and it all just went so fast, like a wildfire from there.
Justin, you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about
that's great.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a co-founder of one of the largest makerspaces in the U.S., Nova Labs. We build a number of 3D printers and drones, mostly quadcopters. We're also quite friendly with the DC Area Drone User Group, which is one of the largest drone hobbyist groups in the country. And Princess Leah approached us and was very interested in partnering with us for this UAV challenge. So we felt that we wanted to be the face of the maker movement, to encourage maker participation in this worldwide challenge to get the best results we can to help stop rhino poaching. I think LB could probably talk about how bad the problem has gotten and how critical it is that we act now, so that we don't get into a more critical situation down the road. So I don't know if you wanted to.
We'll see what the next question is.
Oh, okay. That's kind of like an overview of what we've dealt with, and obviously our purpose of being in South Africa was to learn more about the poaching situation here and what our teams are going to need in terms of guidance for creating and building these UAVs that would be used for anti-poaching. Go ahead, Christian, now.
That sounds very, very interesting. Yes. Now tell me now. Have you started experimenting with different types of technologies yet? Cheap technologies, and if so, what technologies have you started experimenting with?
Well, what we did was we actually brought Aurora Flight Sciences small UAV called the Skate here to Kruger, as well as actually we're in Port Elizabeth. And I would like to thank our hosts here for letting us use their Wi-Fi, and Brian from Line Roars and Rod Weeks, as well as Tracy. I don't see her here, but we really appreciate them letting us come out here and use their internet, because that's one of the greatest challenges we've had. As you know, last time we were supposed to do our vodcast, we were actually on the border of Mozambique and South Africa, and we couldn't make it. There was just no way it was going to happen. So thanks for coming in. But I'm sorry, as far as technology, so what we needed to do was find out what would be a good starting point and what could we bring in right now that the Rangers can actually use. And that's why we decided to have Aurora Flight Sciences bring in Skate, their small UAV, and we were actually able to get the Rangers to use it and show the leadership of Sand Parks as well. And then also in Port Elizabeth, we've been able to demonstrate it for the people here, and everybody loves the idea of the actual wildlife conservation UAV challenge. But at the same time, I think just showing them something that's so easy to use, as well as just a visual of what's out there, has really made them see that, okay, you know what, this is really going to add a lot of value to counter poaching in the future, especially once our teams have come up with some designs and concepts for conservation as well as anti-poaching. Albie, I'll let you talk a little bit more about Sand Parks.
Yeah, so basically, Reserve Protection Agency has a lot of work that we do with Sand Parks, and we've been working with them for about 18 months now, and we are one of, if not the only, not-for-profits endorsed to go out and work on their behalf. So we went up and worked directly with the leadership there, with General Yusta, and worked with the team. A lot of different technologies have been disproved here, and that's kind of left us with a lot to overcome. Some of the things we specifically used on this trip, we have to really highlight. We had some military spec Jeeps out there and a lot of different things doing that, which we were excited about. But the Skate itself was able to work with daytime optics and really prove itself to the African Rangers out there that it really is a successful piece, as well as nighttime with IR. So we've been told over and over again that infrared will not work in Kruger, and we've got rid of that misnomer at this point. We're pretty excited about that. So I think now the idea is to go out there.
Sorry?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Is it all types of infrared, like near infrared, far infrared, mid infrared, or is it just a specific one? Like I know for a fact you're gonna have trouble with near infrared to distinguish what is a tree and what is a rock and what is a person. But what about the far infrared?
Yeah, I think the idea is you've got far infrared there. We're kind of looking at a little bit of everything. So the idea is we want a numerous number of sensor suites. When you read through the challenge, the idea is to get the best product available and combine all the different pieces. So, we're looking at metal detection devices, RFID tag tracking systems, interrogating those so that we get the best picture we can get. As you said, there are some issues there with the way that the Earth cools and heats, and how some of the trees actually hold temperatures very similar to humans. So trying to take a look at the entire picture to get the best solution.
Okay, so it's not just going to be a snap-on, put a FLIR on, and then see who's got the best camera on the sensor on the UAV to do the best sensing available.
What you want to talk about?
A lot of this is really based on creating the best embedded systems and utilizing open source items to come up with a low-cost solution, recognition of what they're looking at, those types of things, so that we can get together a really important solution to what we're doing. So it is a little more complex than just snapping on one sensor and going out there, be it day or nighttime. We know that we have to do some work in the night. That's very important to the mission, but we also need to be able to do a successful day. So that's really where we're looking for innovation to come in.
Okay.
Hey, Elliot, just a quick question here. The challenge was stating that it was going to be a daytime challenge, so we weren't looking to do any infrared or any nighttime flying. Has this information that you've sort of found from the rangers that you actually need to do stuff overnight, do you think you're going to be changing the challenge rules a little bit to incorporate this?
Yes, absolutely. We're actually going to have to be going back to the board and rewriting a lot of the rules and regulations from what we have learned about the challenges that the rangers as well as the terrain is about. So one of the things that we will be doing is also reevaluating where we will hold the final competition, because there are certain things that we're going to need that I don't think we'll be able to get in the U.S. So one of the locations that we are actually looking at is Port Elizabeth, Amacala, and that's where we've been staying for the last 3 days. And we've gone out and looked at their terrain and the animals, so we would be able to actually simulate Kruger Park here at the reserve that they have, which would be a lot closer than doing it somewhere in the U.S. So that is definitely one of the things that the leadership team will be discussing and coming up with a alternative location from what we were originally looking at. And we would also be looking at not just a one-day competition. We're thinking we might actually end up doing a 3 to 5 day competition, because there's just so much that's involved in it, and just one test flight is not necessarily going to be fair for the teams. And then also if we do a daytime and nighttime flight with the weather conditions and a lot of the other variations that we've learned about would not allow us to be able to get everything done in one day. And not to mention we have over 70 teams from 20 countries and 6 continents that have entered the contest. So I mean, it's become the biggest challenge in the world right now. So we're really, really excited and thrilled to have all of you on board for that.
So this scenario in the rules and regulations are very elaborate, depicted a very small UAV that's able to put itself between poachers and rhinos, shine lasers and analyze gunshots. Do you think the teams will meet your expectations on that?
Well, we're hoping that teams will be able to come up with creative ideas. It does not have to be the scenario we have described, because actually we're going to be going back and probably rewriting that scenario anyway. But I think the whole purpose of the challenge is to bring out innovation, ideas that other people might have around the world that we have not thought of. I mean, one thing we're looking at is the UAV, but there's a lot of smart individuals that are out there that have entered the challenge, and they have some brilliant ideas in terms of dealing with counter-poaching and technology combined. So we're hoping to get something out of the box from the challenge.
Okay, no, that sounds very interesting. And another thing is, you said you only limit team entries to 100. Limit the team entries to 100. Is that because you think it's just going to go viral and just unmanageable, or?
Yeah, yes, that's what we thought, and we didn't expect to get over 70 teams in less than a month either. So we will probably be reevaluating this, but you guys do understand that as we progress through the challenge phases, some teams might not make the cut, so we might end up just reducing it down to a handful of teams that would be part of the actual final competition. But that doesn't mean that we wouldn't want the rest of the teams to be involved, because we are going to continue the challenge with part 2 of it, and that would be a different challenge. But for the first one, we're hoping that just getting the awareness out for the rhino poaching, that's the number one key right now, is that they're just disappearing so fast. We were in Kruger for 5 days, and I think they lost about 8 rhinos during the time that we were there.
Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. I understand. And now each team has to submit a proposal. will you be evaluating the teams based upon the proposal? Is that every single team submitting a proposal will be immediately submitted into the competition? Or do the proposals need to be adequate to the what challenge needs to be?
Well,
Obviously, the challenge needs to be, but adequate enough so the proposals will be accepted.
absolutely, yeah. So the proposal that the teams would submit would have to cover the major requirements that we will be putting into the rules and regulations for what we'll need. So the team does have to cover that. So I think most teams will go through phase 1 easy breezy. Phase 2 would get a little bit more complicated, where they would have to show the ability that your UAV can fly, but it's not just a flight. You're going to have to show that, yes, it's actually functional. But part 3 is, I think, the big, huge part where a lot of teams might make it or might not make it, and that's the embedded systems part. So that will be your software and hardware designs.
Okay. Now, if you've got all the proposals, and you let's say me as a team member go and say, well, I've submitted my proposal, I've got to start building my UAV for phase 2, and I've found that there's a flaw in my proposal that I've submitted. What will be the procedure, or can it be changed? Or what will happen then in a case like that, where a person says, well, my proposal is a bit far-fetched, I realize it now when I'm designing, now I want to redesign my UAV that I have submitted to you?
Well, that's actually an excellent question. That's a fabulous question that you asked. And number one, our goal is to save the rhinos. Our goal is to come up with a technology that will be used for anti-poaching. So our competition is there, and we have the rules and regulations, and we have our deadlines for different phases of the challenge. But that does not mean that you cannot come back later to us and say, you know what? We thought this was going to work, but we kind of messed up. And that's why part 3 is where you're going to be submitting the entire proposal with the software as well as the hardware designs. And by then, you will have a much better idea of what it is that you've created. So phase 1, just the concept is going to be very, very easy. But by the time you get to phase 3 is when you'll have learned a lot about what you have developed as well. So that's the final and last cut. So if you can make it through all of those, we don't really have any issues if you come back and say, you know what, we want to change our concept.
Okay, so there's no big deal. Okay, no, 100%. Do you have any questions from the other people? Let me just unmute them. Sorry. Let me just here unmute the people.
I have a question. My name is Jean Gustav, Colorado. And my question is concerning all the technologies that you want to explore. It looks like, to me, that aircraft limited to 55 pounds will not be able to carry all those different technologies. So would it be of interest to develop a multiple vehicle system, basically let's say 2-3 vehicles that fly in concert, each one equipped with different kinds of technologies that are complementary?
I'll take that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think you're right on track, and there's a couple of things that everyone's shaking their head here, which could be that you may have multiple sized platforms to carry the payloads, maybe modular, where you actually switch sensors out. We don't want to limit the innovation. We simply want to put it out there and see. We don't have all of the answers. We're hoping you guys will come up with those. I think Justin might be able to kind of get in there as well, but that's.
Yeah, I think the thing to remember is that typically the mission might be specific. So the sensor needed for that particular mission or that objective might be satisfied by 1 or 2 sensors. So when we talk about modular payloads, if you create a system, you might want to look at a way to modularize it so you can swap in and out to be able to handle different sensors. Does that answer your question, or is?
Well, you probably cannot exchange an RFID system on an aircraft because that requires receiver and antenna on the vehicle, which needs to be integrated into the vehicle, and that would be difficult to swap out. But other systems you may be able to switch out.
I think the thing to remember, and I think definitely the scope of this call should probably be at a higher level, because like Princess Aaliyah said, we definitely need to, after this mission, go back and review the requirements, refine the requirements, incorporate what we've learned over the 10 days that we're going to be here, and compile everything into a written document that's very clear and concise and simple, and then answer questions in a definitive way from the team. So I think that's probably the way to proceed. I definitely don't feel like we're prepared right now to give you like definitive answers that you're going to go back later and go, hey, on that video call you said this. So give us an opportunity to get back to the States, I guess go through everything and I digest it all and then put it into something comprehensive that will answer hopefully most of those questions.
Actually, one of the reasons why we actually had the 55 pound limitation is because when we're looking at doing the competitions in the U.S., for insurance purposes, most of the teams would have probably joined AMA, and one of the requirements is that the aircraft that's flying is less than 55 pounds. So that's where we originally came up with the rules and regulations for that. But as Justin said, once we get back to the States, our technical team, which is the technology-assisted counter-poaching network, they will get together and look at all the facts and data that we have gathered from this particular trip, and then say, okay, now that we have this information, what do we have to go back and change? I mean, is 55 pound too much, too little? And we'll base it on that once we hear back from our technology-assisted counter-poaching network.
Okay. May I ask a different question?
Absolutely.
I had discussions with some people from the life, or it is let's say the people that look at the animals, and in Kruger Park. And one of the big questions that they have is that there's not a good understanding of the operation modes of the poachers. How do they enter the park? How do they operate on the ground? And get basically their concept of operations. So that may influence how we design an aircraft.
Oh, do you want to take that?
What's his name?
I don't use the name.
Okay. I could speak a little bit to that. The interesting thing about this week was that it started as a fact-finding mission, and then as they saw the capabilities of the UAV that we brought to demonstrate, it quickly turned into an operational support mission. We literally were embedded with Sam Park's Rangers doing live anti-poaching missions, and then we were then embedded with the South African National Defense Forces. On the way out to the border with Mozambique, I was in a truck for 2 hours with a colonel in the Defense Forces who talked a little bit about that. So how the poachers operate typically, they could be in groups of 3 or 5. One usually carries the gun, one carries an axe, one carries supplies and equipment, things like that. So we did get some sort of some tactical information that they've gathered on how the poachers operate that are going to be helpful for the teams, but they're very good bushmen. That's what we've heard over and over again, is that they're very, very good in the African bush. They can traverse 30 kilometers in about a day, actually overnight. So they move at a very rapid pace, and it's a very difficult problem. I mean, everybody's identified this as a very difficult problem to solve, but this isn't something that's going to scare us away. So.
And the other thing we learned is actually a 12 level of poaching that's involved. So originally maybe there were like 5 different levels, but now you've got, like Justin said, the person that carries the axe, the person that makes the call, the person that brings the car, the person that takes it over the border. So you've got a lot of different groups that are involved, and that we've learned has gone up to 12 different levels of network that they have. You want to add more?
Yeah, I think the key is that there's a lot there, and there's actually a lot that's unknown. I mean, when we went out and flew the skate, there was areas that had never been really seen before. The Defense Force was sitting on observation posts where they couldn't actually see the terrain they were trying to defend, and we could actually visually see people streaming across the border. In fact, we were able to pick it up with the skate as well, and it was an extremely valuable tool. So. Looking at some of the sensors, and that's where the fact-finding mission comes in. When we get the teams back there, and my team stays here in place, we'll be able to share that information with our technology team, and they'll be able to put out really well-defined requirements. And that's why you're seeing the discussion on slightly changing requirements, is because that's what we were here for, is to find out exactly what's going on the ground. We've done that from a national park to a provincial to a Defense Force type response, and running around in the private parks the last few days. I think everyone's got a good sense of what sensors can do and what we're up against, and now it's just a matter of getting with the full technical team together and putting those facts in place to really fine-tune the requirements for the teams.
Thank you.
Yeah, guys, just a question here from Peter. Hey, when you were using the skate, did you have were your experience from this thing, was it more you were just launching it to cover a general area, or were you finding that the guys would go out with the truck and then they discover they have a problem and then need to launch it for a support of a direct operation? Which kind of mode did you find that it was most useful for?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take that. When with Reserve Protection Agency being on the ground quite a bit with the teams out there, we really wanted to leave the application up to the Rangers, and the section Rangers were invaluable in that regard. You remember up front that the skate is a tactical tool. It's not something that you're going to go out and cover large areas with. It's not really made for that. That being said, many of the Rangers came up with their own applications. So they saw it one day, went home, thought about it. We went out with some of the locals, and they had multiple different ideas. The first one being, rather than hiking into an observation post, he said, I want to get out of my bakkie and throw this thing up in the air and take a look. So we were able to clear an area that he would usually take 4+ hours to clear in about 30 minutes. As soon as he was done with that, he said, how much time do we have? And we jumped in our vehicles, and we drove about an hour-and-a-half vehicle patrol, where he then cleared a really traveled hot spot. And again, about another 30 minutes, he was happy with that. Other rangers said, look, we're tracking spoor. We know they're 500 to 800 meters in front of us, but we can't quite catch them. And as soon as it starts to get dark, we lose that. So the idea being, you simply put it up in the air and reach out there 500 to 800 meters in front of yourself, and then you can take a look and close the distance rapidly. You know, and as nightfall comes on, instead of just terminating missions, we can now actually go out there and work at night. So unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, skate is a tactical unmanned aerial vehicle. So that really defined the mission, where I think what you'll see in the challenge is that you have to cover a little bit of everything, from the small tactical all the way out to a strategic peak.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Yes. Another thing is in your spec, you said communications to the drone is very important, and you said talking about the 4G network. But as far as my knowledge goes, is that the 4G network is not very extensive there, unless Kruger Park has got their own little 4G network going around. And if no signal is made to the 4G connection, and you have to fall back onto a normal radio link, can you please elaborate, maybe to us, what networks are there? And
I'll jump back in on that one again. So it's pretty easy to say that you will not have a 4G network. You probably won't have a 3G network. However, one of the things Reserve Protection Agency has been working on is actually fixing just that. And as well as now that we've got the challenge online, we have people like Kashmir Robotics talking about building a cyber canopy. And we've looked at a lot of those things. And that technology is out there. And we certainly hope that in fact, lack of 3G network here in Amakala is a perfect example where we're driving around to find one. We found our 3G spot. And I think many of you know, once you have a 3G spot, it's not hard to broadcast that across large areas. So we will be certainly working on that, and it's my intent from Reserve Protection Agency to have that fixed. We worked with that. Comm systems alone, simply just voice transmissions are basically 0% in the Kruger right now, contrary to what some people may tell you. And we've also given them some scenarios and options that are off the shelf to patch that as well.
Yeah, as you know, we could not make our first call, and even here, this call was quite a mission. So once again, I would like to thank Tracy for letting us use her Wi-Fi here. And if you guys are ever in Port Elizabeth, you have to stay at Amakala Reserve. They have been fantastic here. We really, really appreciate them hosting us. Thank you, Brian, Tracy, and Rod. Yes.
Great, guys. Now, we've got a Christopher here. He likes to find out more about the fact-finding mission when you traveled at night. Christopher, if you could elaborate on your question.
Yeah, this is Christopher with Project Darlene in the U.S. I wanted to hear more about your, the actual, on the ground logistical things that we're going to have to deal with. Is a lot of the travel from the poachers happening at night? You already answered. You said 3 to 5 people. It sounds like maybe they're on foot. I've heard poachers in other areas using even helicopters. Using their own technology. Yeah, it doesn't sound like that's the case here necessarily. But the segue into that is, are there other aircraft that we need to worry about, like tourists, things like that are up in the air? So 2 questions. One, what's happening on the ground with poachers that you've found out traveling at night mostly? And the second question, do we need to worry about other things in the air?
Yep, sorry, going to jump back in here. So yes, they are traveling at night, and the 3 to 5 is pretty much defined. We know those are about the size of the teams as far as Kruger goes. As you go deeper into certain areas, then the team size tends to go up. However, I don't want to underemphasize that there could be as many as 30 poaching teams in the park at a time, and they do a starburst effect where they saturate an area, then spread out. So there's really no way that the rangers can cover all of the spoor and track all the teams at once. So yes, 3 to 5 in a team, but there may be 30 teams simultaneously. From what we saw, it's a complete stream across the border illegally. So we have our work cut out for us, and certainly they come across the border day and night, but the majority of the poaching incidents are at night, and they move at a high speed. As far as the aircraft, there are multiple different types of aircraft going on there. We saw a lot of Defense Force flights as well as some Sandparks flights. There's small amounts of private traffic, but it is a national park, so there are some flight restrictions as far as that goes. However, unfortunately, because of the communication system the way it is, there's a very big breakdown in communication amongst the different agencies who should, and obviously we would like to see communicating on where they're flying. As far as the challenge itself goes, I don't see that to be an issue. We were able to get flight clearances and fly in an area, and we had a pretty good way of spreading the word on that. So less concerned with traffic that we don't know about. They're going to clear the airspace for us, but there definitely is other things in the air. And back to the poachers and the helicopters, a lot of that has probably been played up in areas in the media. Yes, they do use aerial reconnaissance, so they may go out and spot using different things, but this idea that's been said that poachers are using helicopters to fly in, dart an animal, and fly out, although we have seen instances of that, the more commonplace in the Kruger is to go in and use the assault rifles in a tactical defensive position and use the hunting rifle to shoot it, and then obviously a hatchet or a small saw to remove the horn. So we're talking about very basic and simple approaches to that.
And it's all on foot. They're all on foot.
Don't downplay your innovation into what you can detect, because because of the value of what we're talking about, as we get more advanced with our technology and catch up to them, certainly they're going to use other things, and we don't want to limit you on thinking that it's a simple answer.
They're all on foot.
Most of them are coming in on foot. As far as in the Kruger itself, you got to remember you can't. You're not supposed to travel at night. We saw a lot of people pulled over at night. We drove a lot at night ourselves. So most of the poaching inside the Kruger itself is on foot. Again, I don't want to limit things, because here in the Eastern Cape, the tactics are completely different, and we're not simply trying to protect one park. Although it has 70% of the rhino in the world in that park, really what we want to do is come up with a solution that's going to work across Africa and really globally. So,
would you say that the poachers in the night use was it night vision glasses to navigate?
Well, we've heard that they do have some night vision and other accessories that they would use to be able to travel through the night. But I think one thing that is key is that these guys are expert bushmen, which for them, traveling day or night in the bush is just like their normal lifestyle. So for them to be able to go through the bush, one of the key things, if they're not using night vision, is the whole issue of the full moon. So most of the poaching occurs during the full moon phase, and I think that's the reason why while we were in Kruger, it was a full moon, so that's why they had several rhinos that were poached. Like I said, 8 is what we heard, but those are the ones that they actually found. It could have been way more than that, and that's the other issue that they deal with, is it takes several days for them possibly to even find a rhino carcass, and by then probably it's just bones left as well. So most of the poaching happens during a full moon phase, so that's why if they do not have night vision, they're perfectly fine. And second, because they are expert bushmen and that's what they do, they know how to maneuver through the African bush without extra accessories.
Okay, that's very interesting. Well, has anybody got any more questions for the team?
Yeah, I also like to hear about, well, two things. One would be weather, and the other would be the available, I guess, the skill levels of the ground control. You know, how much, one question that came up was how much training is possible, how much training is, I guess is needed, depends on the technology used. But, what are the ground control capabilities that we're going to have to accommodate for? And also, there was some comments in your scenario about weather. On average, what kind of weather are we looking at? Mostly dry, sunny, kind of scenario. That's those two things. Thank you.
Well, we were there. I'm going to let you take the second part, and I'll talk about the weather. So we were there for 5 days in Kruger, and one thing that we noticed is the variation in temperature and the sun, the rain, and everything. So within 5 days, we actually saw a great variation. So I think the 42 Celsius was probably the highest temperature we saw, and the day we were leaving, it was heavy rain, 16 degrees Celsius. So, that's in a 5-day period in terms of temperature variations. And then the winds that we dealt with were anywhere from 10 miles per hour to perhaps maybe even 30 to 35 miles per hour. So that's where skate could not fly in extreme wind conditions. And I think variation and when that wind comes in and when it's not so heavy, we will look into the data for that so we have a better idea. So if you're flying between 4 and 6, that's the heaviest time, or if you're flying between 7 and 9, you're not going to have that much wind factor. But the temperature does vary throughout the day, and during the daytime there's not much activity, and most of the poachers don't necessarily poach because it does get really, really hot, and most animals are resting as well. I hope that answers the question on the weather, and if anybody else wants to add anything on the weather, you're welcome to, but LB will go ahead and tell you about the second part of your question.
Yeah, as the princess said, the wind, although very unseasonable and not normal in the Kruger, that's pretty common, certainly along the coastlines as we saw here. And we should give skate its due diligence.
Yes.
It was way outside of its wind limits, and it was flying excessively well and proved itself time and time again. But we did see very high winds. As far as the ground and the response teams, a couple of things to note, which that I find very interesting is you need the Rangers' buy-in, and we spend a lot of time here, certainly my organization, in working with the Ranger. We know that a Ranger or a field guide's never going to buy a piece of technology themselves, but we spend 95% of our time getting buy-in from them, and 5% getting the owners and the leadership to purchase things. Sandparks, a very similar situation. I've spent the last year and a half getting approval and working with the general and traveling around the world raising this initiative. But the time we spent was on the ground trying to get the guys in the field to figure out how it was going to work for them and to get them excited about it. They're very excited when they realize that it's a tool for them and not something that's going to replace them, and something that they can touch and put their hands on and understand what's going on. So as we get transitioning from the tactical mission to the strategic mission, it's just getting them to understand what's going on. There's major limitations in communication, as we said, so there's no cell phone network currently and really no radio communication for much of the park, so that really prohibits the work. Defense Force currently cannot talk to sandparks, and sandparks can't talk to police, etc., etc. But hopefully, months and months before you guys come down here, those solutions will be in place, as they've already seen them and they know the value in it.
Okay. Now, another question just popped into my head is that the CIA has released UAV regulations here in South Africa. Like no plane will go out of sight. Planes not allowed to go higher than 400 meters unless police involvement is present. Will there be special rules or special affiliations to the CIA be made to accommodate with the challenge?
Yeah, as far as we understand, there's no official policy at this point yet. If there's compliance, according to CIA, if there's compliance with existing systems overseas, it shouldn't cause any trouble in organized areas as well. The Kruger is a bit different as well because it is not. It is a restricted area, so the planes flying there is under more military control than the civilian. So that does change things and doesn't give the CIA the same kind of authority.
Okay, so there won't be really issues regarding that.
Yeah, similar to what we've done on this one was we contacted CIA, let them know exactly what we were doing, and they have some basic guidance. It unfortunately tends to vary day to day. However, they're pretty clear, and you have to have permission over the reserve. We went ahead and put out notices to airmen so everyone knows what's going on. We make good communication, and we make sure that we keep our flight levels down. Obviously, for the more strategic type of things, altitudes are going to go up. Kruger's quite familiar with this. They're already using things like the Seeker, and as Casper said, we'll make sure that we comply and that everyone is on board and approved, and that's what we did for this one. So we got good buy-in, and until that official policy is signed, and we don't expect that, unfortunately, anytime in the very near future, but we're certainly hoping that we can assist with that as that comes along, and we'll be sure that we comply.
Okay, thank you guys. Do we have any questions from our signed-in users?
Yeah, this is Christopher again. So I had a question about...
yeah, if not...
Hello?
Yes, speak.
Okay, this is Christopher again.
Okay, yes.
A question about the 300 feet. I guess this is kind of related to those regulations that you're referring to. Is that 300 feet just a set height just for the testing? Is there an issue with going above that? I know that came up a lot, particularly when we discussed the amount of the area, the square footage, being able to see further by getting up higher. So I just want to hear about that.
Yeah, currently we're limiting to 400 feet just for compliance, but we're working on getting that higher, and working with the CIA to to make sure that we can actually fly on different levels that we need to operate in for the specific aircraft. Certain aircraft operate at higher levels better, and so the smaller tactical things will work at lower altitudes. So, but just for the time being, that's what we're working on, but we will be working on getting that approval for higher as well.
Okay, guys. I think yes, we've got so much knowledge from you guys. It has been such a great broadcast with you guys, and I would really like to see this challenge going further, growing bigger, and I will be following you guys step by step, and post and feel free to post your the challenge, how it's going, and the whole setup of everything on Do-It-Yourself Drones, so the people at Do-It-Yourself Drones can also follow your challenge and see how far they go. Thanks,
Absolutely.
guys.
We'll definitely keep you guys updated in terms of what we're doing. And we do appreciate, Christian, having you do the DIY drones and being so patient with us on trying to get some internet connection.
No problem. Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Great, guys. Thanks for everything.
All right, thank you, and we'll be back.
And then we talk again.
Yeah, once we're back in the U.S. and we get together with our technology-assisted counter-poaching network, and they come up with some more rules and regulations that we'll have to follow, we will definitely we would like to do another video cast with you just to update the teams and answer any technical questions at that particular time.
No, 100%. We can do that anytime.
Okay, great.
Thanks,
you.
guys.
All right, thank
bye.
you. All right.
Bye-bye.
All right. Cheers.